Joe is actually a hoarder.
Uh-huh,
And the
uh-huh.
only reason we have stayed married is we have made the agreement he can do anything he wants downstairs in the basement as long as I get to decide what's on the main floor.
Right.
He has a strange attachment to boxes and he can't
Hmm?
throw away a box. He's in Georgia right now and I've been throwing some of his boxes away.
I'm bumping Tony to panelist because
Good.
for some reason it won't let me invite Tony as a web. I mean, he can start the Zoom meeting apparently, but cannot. It's really irritating to me that he just can't be on the panel. If I have him in one place, it won't let me put him in another place. So, Tony, I invited you to be a panelist if you can accept the invite. There we go. Oh, let me try again. Okay, there we go. So, there we go.
Yay.
So,
Okay, now we're kicking with gas.
There you are.
it's good to see you,
Haven't you
Tony.
figured out it's winter?
I'm inside, so who cares?
I'm inside too, and I'm
Look.
still
I got on
bundled up.
shorts or not.
I'm gonna be like
Uh,
this. It's good to
Hello,
see you.
Miriam and Camille.
Hey guys.
Dave,
Um,
I think it's because when you were out, you had me being the host. So
yeah,
anytime you send me a link, it always asks me to come on as a host.
right. And what I run into is if I try to put you as a panelist, it won't let me. It gives me an error message. Says this person's already a host, and if I try to take you off as a host,
Maybe I
I
could take
anyway,
myself off as a host because I think as a host I have the same powers as you. So I could probably take me off as a host. You probably
that may
can't.
be what we need to do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll take a look at it.
Okay. That's sorry about it. It never feels like it's always like one thing. I try to take you off as a
Whoops.
host.
Maybe I
I
could
go ahead.
Facebook. No, I wasn't saying anything. That was your feedback.
Oh, okay. All right. So I tell you what, let's do this. Let me get the intro was really long today because there were a lot of people uh I couldn't pick how many who to use as for our intro. I tell you what, how about Paula, can you be the liturgist and Tony, would you be voice of the people?
Sure.
And then um Tony, if you'll do the Jeremiah reading, I will do the gospel reading. Does that sound good? All right. Let's see. Let me pull that up. All right. Whoops. Ready when y'all are.
Today, Alaska celebrates Elizabeth Petrovich Day because it was her leadership that led to the February 16th, 1945 passage of the first anti-discrimination law in the United States. She and her husband Roy, both of the Kling I never can say that word,
Yeah,
Tlingit
Tlingit, I think.
Nation
Mhm.
faced housing discrimination and organized with others to get the legislation passed. This is also the feast day of Onesimus, the former enslaved Christian mentioned in Paul's letter to Philemon. Onesimus ran away with Paul, but Paul's letter asked Philemon to receive him back as a brother instead of a slave. Though we don't know much else about Onesimus, tradition has it that he became a bishop in Ephesus. Today also marks the birthday of Philip Melanchthon, a 1947 major theologian of the Protestant Reformation. He was largely responsible for the Augsburg Confession. The Kyoto Protocol on Climate Change went into effect this day in 2005. Though the United States signed it in 1998, it has still not been ratified by Congress. Many other countries in the world, though, continue to follow it. The Lord be with you.
And also with you.
Hear these words of invitation.
The hospitality of God knows no bounds.
The love of God is immeasurable.
The generosity of God is beyond our wildest dreams.
We gather today as invited ones,
As beloved ones,
as blessed ones.
draw near and let us break the bread of life.
Our responsive reading is from the first Psalm. The truly happy person doesn't follow wicked advice,
Doesn't stand on the road of sinners, doesn't sit with the disrespectful.
Instead of doing those things, these persons love the Lord's instruction.
And they recite God's instructions day and night.
They are like a tree replanted by streams of water, which bears fruit at just the right time.
And whose leaves don't fade, whatever they do succeeds.
That's not true for the wicked.
They are like the dust that the wind blows away.
And that's why the wicked have no standing in the court of justice.
Neither will sinners in the assembly of the righteous.
The Lord is intimately acquainted with the way of the righteous.
But the way of the wicked is destroyed. Our Hebrew reading comes from Jeremiah chapter 17, verses 5 through 10. And I'll be reading from the Common English version of the Bible. The Lord proclaims, cursed are those who trust in mere humans, who depend on human strength to turn their hearts from the Lord. They will be like a desert shrub that doesn't know when relief comes. They will live in the parched places of the wilderness and in barren lands where no one survives. Happy are those who trust in the Lord, who rely on the Lord. They will be like trees planted by the streams whose roots reach down to the water. They won't fear drought when it comes. Their leaves will remain green. They won't be stressed in a time of drought and fail to bear fruit. The most cunning heart is beyond help. Who can figure it out? I, the Lord, probe the heart and discern motives to give anyone what they deserve, the consequences of their deeds.
Our gospel reading is from Luke chapter 6, verses 17 through 26. Jesus came down from the mountain with them and stood on a large area of level ground. A great company of his disciples and a huge crowd of people from all around Judea and Jerusalem and the area around Tyre and Sidon joined him there. They came to hear him and to be healed from their diseases, and those bothered by unclean spirits were healed. The whole crowd wanted to touch him because power was going out from him, and he was healing everyone. Jesus raised his eyes to his disciples and said, "Happy are you who are poor, because God's kingdom is yours. Happy are you who hunger now, because you will be satisfied. Happy are you who weep now, because you will laugh. Happy are you when people hate you, reject you, insult you, and condemn your name as evil because of the human one. Rejoice when that happens. Leap for joy because you have a great reward in heaven. Their ancestors did the same things to the prophets. But how terrible for you who are rich, because you have already received your comfort. How terrible for you who have plenty now, because you will be hungry. How terrible for you who laugh now, because you will mourn and weep. How terrible for you when all speak well of you. Their ancestors did the same thing to the false prophets. May God bless the hearing of this word.
Thanks be to God.
Philip Melanchthon wrote, "But faith is not belief in the history of Christ, as the godless think, but belief in the purpose of Christ's incarnation, crucifixion, and resurrection." Elizabeth Peratrovich said, "The ability to understand without condemnation and to accept our friends and enemies in the light of their weaknesses is something we must acquire early in life in order to find happiness in this world."
Thanks for getting us started. We'll move into a time of prayer. I'll begin the prayer. Those of you who are listening, if you're on Facebook or YouTube, if you want to just lift up a prayer request in the comments or the chat, you can do that. Also, if you just don't mind, if you just click like or just comment with where you're watching from, that gives us a way to count you with us today. Thanks for being with us. I'll keep an eye on YouTube. Tony, can you keep an eye on Facebook? Okay, let's go to God in prayer. Gracious God, in this day and time, the words of the psalm can be hard to hear. When the wicked seem to have the upper hand, and there is such conflict in the world, when the world is in dire straits, when people who are pushing for freedom find themselves silenced or marginalized, and the rich and powerful whose only interest is themselves seem to be in control. But God, we hear that you have planted us like streams, like trees beside streams of water. And we ask you to fill us with the nourishment that gives us the strength to endure. That in this time of drought, you will be a living spring in us, and that we also would be living springs gushing up for other people. We know where real nourishment and real life come from. And it's not the hollow life offered by riches or the power of this world, but by your love, your grace, your revealing that all things are connected. We ask for you to give us strength, and we especially ask you to give strength to those who are on the front lines. And whether we mean front lines literally, as in places like Ukraine, or front lines figuratively, as people who fight struggles of their own, whether that's financial or mental or physical. God, for all those who are struggling today, we ask you to give them strength to be a river to their roots. God, we lift up to you the cause of peace in this world, which seems so far from us right now. Give us glimmers of your kingdom. And we lift up to you those people and situations in our lives, and I invite those of you who are listening to share.
For Darren,
Lord, hear our prayer.
for our elders, lost it, for our elders to stay well and be kept safe.
Lord, hear our prayer. For the Rouse and Billups family.
Lord, hear our prayer. For the multitude of people forced to serve in military operations.
Lord, hear our prayer.
For all those
For,
government employees who are afraid of losing their jobs.
Lord,
Lord,
hear our prayer. For our American trans community.
Lord, hear our prayer.
For the people of Ukraine, Gaza, Sudan, and all of those others in war zones.
Lord, hear our prayer.
For strength for progressive pastors.
Lord, hear our prayer.
Gratitude for every sign of new life and for those stepping up to stand in the gap.
Lord, hear our prayer.
For strength to wake up every day to our new reality. Amen.
Lord, hear our prayer.
For truth to prevail.
Lord, hear our prayer.
For those in charge of science and health to not be dispirited.
Lord, hear our prayer.
In gratitude for community.
Lord, hear our prayer.
Courage for all good people in places of power.
Lord, hear our prayer.
God, for all the things that we've named and all those things that remain unnamed, we know that you hear the prayers of our hearts, even the ones that we don't say. And we thank you for giving us the words that we can always rely on, that Jesus taught us. Holy One, our Mother and Father, let your name be revered. Let your reign come. Let your will be done on earth as it is in the heavens. Give us today the bread we need for today, and forgive our sins as we forgive those who sin against us. Save us from the time of trial and deliver us from evil. For yours is the sovereignty, the power, and the glory, now and forever. Amen. So thank you for getting us started. And again, thanks to all those who are tuning in today. Again, if you're on Facebook or YouTube, if you don't mind just clicking like or commenting with where you're watching from, that gives us a way to count you. Yeah, so I love the fact that the liturgy, the lectionary, I'm sorry, the lectionary is a list of readings that Roman Catholics and Methodists and Lutherans and Presbyterians and Episcopalians and a lot of other denominations in the world have kind of agreed to follow. And we're in it's a 3-year cycle of readings, and the idea is if you follow the readings, then every 3 years you cover almost 70% of the Bible. So you'll get at least a view of all the scriptures, and that they'll be used in worship at the proper time. So you read Christmas scriptures at Christmas, and you read Easter scriptures at Easter, and that kind of stuff. So the church calendar is built around this. Now, it's not a surprise. Every 3 years, these scriptures come around, but today they just feel especially fitting, especially because it's talking about the wicked and the righteous. Now, I got to point out, I don't normally like it when religious people talk in terms of the wicked as though there's just one group of people who's wicked, and the righteous as though there's just one group of people who are righteous, and usually we're the righteous and they're the wicked. I don't like that kind of framework. We're all mixtures of righteous and wicked. Like we're morally ambiguous human beings. I think that's a really important reality to say at the beginning of this. And yet, we see situations like in the current administration and the current regime where you have the richest man in the world who is taking an axe to a government that has taken 50, 60 years to build, that is arranged around, hopefully, not always, but sometimes arranged around national priorities of doing things like taking care of the poor, advancing democracy in places in the world where it's under attack, doing things like coordinating pandemic response. All of these things, which it takes all of us to do, that we can't just outsource to private businesses, and we can't just say, oh, everyone's, it's a dog-eat-dog world, everyone's on their own. These things that take massive coordination of social and real capital, right? That have taken decades to build. The richest man in the world is axing right and left. This is sin. There's not another word for it. This is wickedness. There's not really a good word for it. This is wicked. It is awful. It goes against everything Jesus Christ talks about, whether we're talking about policy on the big scale or individually on the small scale, that taking care of our neighbors, coordinating social action in pursuit of our common values, those are things that are important, not just for religion, but for us to survive as a human species. So I need to say this unequivocally, Elon Musk is behaving wickedly. This is sin. Donald Trump is behaving wickedly. This is sin. And it is outrageous to me that someone who has a net worth of 400 billion some odd dollars, probably more than that by now, who is self-dealing, who is attacking NASA because it's a competitor to his SpaceX program, and is looking at laying off thousands of people in the city I'm just moving to in Huntsville. This is sin. It's wicked. And ideally, pastors across the nation would be standing up and saying, this is contrary to Christian values. It's bad ethics, obviously. It's bad government, and it's sin. All right, so we all know that. If you're on this call, you already know that. This is not a surprise. and I don't want to just rant against this son of a gun, who or this pair of guns, who are decimating what honorable people have built over a lifetime. One more thing. I grew up in Boy Scouts, very conservative Boy Scouts that taught principles of leadership, right? And what everything I've learned about leadership over the last 50 years, over my whole life, is like these people who are in charge right now are the exact opposite of everything I have ever been taught to do or to value. So recognizing all that, and I don't want us to just rant about how awful these people are. Here's the thing in the scriptures today. As overwhelming and as awful as these people are, they are dust. That they are like the chaff that the wind blows away. This is what the psalmist is saying. And I have to say, it may sound like blind ignorance or wishful thinking, but what the psalmist is saying, and what Jeremiah is saying, and what Jesus is saying, is that this stuff will not endure. That the people who endure are those who nurture their spirits by streams of righteousness. The idea for us is to be like trees planted by the water. Now, I don't know if you've ever noted, I've studied a lot about trees recently. We're planting an orchard, we're building, we're really investing in kind of doing permaculture stuff at the new house that we're moving into. It's a direction we've been going, I would say, for at least a decade, that we have become more and more interested in gardening and growing things and looking at the way these complex webs interact. And one of the things I love about what I've learned about trees is that if you want a good harvest, that you really planting a food forest is the way to go. And food forests require diversity. So one of the things I like about this system that we've looked at is that you plant trees, you might have a fruit tree, a nut tree, but then the next tree you plant needs to be a nitrogen fixer, something like a red bud. So you're pulling nitrogen from the air and putting it into the soil. And then the trees, this is the crazy thing, right? The trees are sharing nutrients underground. Their roots, ideally, if you plant them close enough, but not too close, their roots intertwine and their roots actually support each other, right? In really healthy forests where you've got this nice tangle of roots and a mycelium network that connects them all, the trees are protected against drought and high winds and all kinds of things. Trees that are planted in cities, like a city park, where there's no other trees around them, and all that's around them is, grass that you have to fertilize over and over. Those roots become weak and brittle, and a strong wind can knock over a tree that's planted in isolation. But when you plant trees with the idea that they're going to be in community, their roots actually weave together to support them so the winds don't knock them over. The mycelial network helps them share nutrients. So a tree that's pulling nitrogen from the air can feed it to a fruit tree over here, and the fruit will be more productive, right? The nuts will be more productive. So there's these wonderful things that we can learn from looking at the world of nature and kind of designing our growing processes around it. If we, diversity is important, thinking about the placement of things, where resources are so that they're evenly distributed, so that, one of the things that we do is we dig swales across sloped ground so that as water moves down the ground, it's slowed down and captured by the swales, which feed the roots of the trees. That it's important for you to have things like keystone species. Oak trees, by the way, are fantastic keystone plants that help nurture diversity for all the other plants around them. There's like 400 species of caterpillar that will thrive on a tree, which attracts birds. And the birds come and the birds help keep the pestilential insects down. And again, the more diversity you can get, if you've got some of these keystone species, you plan for other things like blueberries and other shorter plants that then the caterpillars can go and make their nest. They become butterflies or moths and they go their own way. But one of the big things is how important diversity is for a healthy ecosystem. If you don't have diversity, your ecosystem is crap. Monocultures are crap. And so the people who are advocating monocultures and cultural hegemony, who are anti-immigrant, what they're really advocating for is a weaker society. And I think the psalmists and I think the biblical authors knew this stuff. So I think what I would love to see in the church, in our society, is a real valuation of how important diversity is for a healthy ecosystem. And that in that diversity, that we would be like trees planted by streams of water. The spiritual power of connecting to our faith traditions, of recognizing that we are more than this moment, that we are bigger, we are connected to something bigger than America. I got to tell you, I'm so heartened. Although I'm heartbroken for our country, I am heartened when I listen to the news from the rest of the world. Now I know there's fascism in Europe and there's Russia and Ukraine and stuff, but y'all, as our intro talked about today, most countries in the world signed on to the Kyoto Protocol. United States didn't. The United States is behind in a lot of things, but I'm heartened that the rest of the world at least seems to be coming on board with a greater consciousness, a greater awareness. And maybe our country's decline will spark greater awareness in the rest of the world of how important this stuff is. Also in our own communities, wherever we can fashion it, I think it's important for us to be like streams, like trees planted by streams of water, that we don't lose contact with the things that are vital and important in our faith tradition, because otherwise we feel like it's just us against the world. We're not part of something bigger than ourselves. We are connected to all the saints who have ever lived and all the saints that will come after us. And that, I think, is one of the really important pieces of our faith tradition. That's part of what gives us the capacity to endure storms and droughts and everything else. So I'm advocating today for y'all to be really healthy trees, to try to sink those roots down into deep, good, nourishing soil. I think that's what's going to make Jesus's words come true, that happy are you who are poor, happy are you who are hungry, happy are you who are persecuted. You're going to see things turn around. Those who are on top, well, ultimately all our fates are dust anyway, but those who are on top are dust. And may we live to see that. So, love to hear your responses.
Going along with the farming metaphor.
Mm-hmm.
Will Campbell is one of my favorite people in the world. He's no longer around. He was a Baptist preacher back in the 50s, 60s, who got fired from every church he was ever at because he got so involved in the civil rights movement. I think I just froze. Am I still there?
You're on.
Okay. He writes a book where he's talking about growing up, and he's the first person in his family to ever go to college. And his parents and grandparents are so proud of him. They're farmers and they've never had a college graduate, and Will's going to be it. And he goes and studies agriculture. And after a couple of years, he comes home for the summer and he's out helping his grandfather on the farm. And he starts to explain to his grandfather how if he used contour plowing on the hills where he's planting, it would help keep the water from running off and it would soak in more. Mm-hmm. And his grandfather, who had encouraged him to study agriculture, had an absolute fit and told him he had been farming his whole life. He didn't need anybody to tell him what to do. That young
Right.
whippersnapper just thought he knew more. And Campbell made the comment, in the South, once you get educated, they'll never forgive you, which I love.
Right.
But to me, the United States is so much like his grandfather. We are
Mhm.
so convinced that we know it and we have it right that we don't want to learn from other people.
Mhm.
We don't want to look at Northern Europe and see their prison system and their justice system work so much better than ours. We don't want to look at Canada and see their healthcare system
Right.
works beautifully. Uh, you know, we're as stubborn as that grandfather, thinking we know it all and refuse to learn, and we're
Yeah.
stuck here.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think it's a good analogy. And by the way, I also love Will Campbell. I think his biography is called Brother to a Dragonfly. Um,
Brothers to a Dragonfly and
yeah,
40 Acres and a Goat.
yeah, good stuff. Anyone who's interested in Will, yeah,
You know, keeping with the farming metaphors, but the waters are polluted. Like you don't even want to imbibe the water. We got no EPA regulations in this.
well, it's,
Um, I,
it's,
you know, I'm being funny, but like seriously, like Dave, like you know where I was with religion when we first met.
mhm,
Like I was literally on the screw church team. Like
yeah,
I don't need this,
right,
and my faith is being tested right now.
mhm,
I know these people who pretend to be like closer to Jesus than the rest of us, who pretend like they're like his first cousin on his mama's side, have no idea what Jesus is trying to do or what he's trying to say.
right,
But it is infuriating to me that so many people have, you talked about the tree being planted by itself. Like as Americans, that's how we pretty much live. And we
mhm,
talked about this in the social context of when crimes happen in marginalized communities, it's the whole community. But let a white person do something, it's just that one lone wolf.
yeah,
And that like just speaks to like the American version of exceptionalism, which makes us think that we know everything and we're all knowing and all seeing, and where
mhm,
we're blind as all our doers. I think about movies that I've seen like Independence Day and uh, Contact, where we're so smart, like we can literally put up a F-15 fighter plane against an intergalactic vehicle and win.
mhm, mhm,
How, how does that supposed to
right,
work?
right,
Like, and I don't care what kind of virus you put in that software. First of all, if they can come from another part of the galaxy, chances are they're looking at us the same way we look at dogs. Really,
right,
they probably look at us the same way we look at ants, because
right,
dogs got a little sense, right? So like it's that whole arrogance, and we're seeing it like played out
mhm,
in ways that we've never seen it before in our government.
yeah, yeah. Right. Absolute,
And,
absolute ignorance and arrogance combined.
and
Yeah.
for the number of people who look like y'all who are okay with this,
Hmm.
I had a friend the other day, can't tell you what she works for. She works for a government agency, and she said the day when they froze all the assets, one of her white coworkers came to her like, "Oh my God, what are we gonna do?" She's like, "What do you mean?" "Well, you know, we're not gonna have a job after this." She goes, "Well, my parents told me I could come stay with them if I need to." And this is like and she's like, "Well, everybody doesn't have that privilege." She's like, "But this is what he told
Yeah.
y'all that he was gonna do.
Yeah.
He never said this." What?
Right. Right.
I
Right.
posted a video yesterday of this woman from the farming community who was just distraught that their farming stuff is going to get cut. White people are really okay with everybody else getting screwed on
Mhm.
until it affects them.
Yeah. And a lot of
And
people, yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
it bothers me that we cannot see past ourselves.
Yeah.
And not just white people. It's the same that can be true of straight black people. They don't really give a crap about gay people until it happens to them. You
Hmm.
know, the number of Latinos who voted for this man, who are now being deported with "I voted for Trump" sticker. This is what you get. And when I tell you I have no sympathy for these people right now, none. I have none whatsoever. By some like curious thing of magic, I have clawed my way to a position where at this point, I work in an almost recession-proof industry. I am not really worried about what he's going to do. But at the same time, my level of empathy has gone whoop, because this is what you asked for. This is what you asked for because you don't care about anybody but yourself. You know, one of our favorite quotes by Norman Niemöller from World War II, you know, when it came for the socialists, I didn't do anything because I wasn't a socialist.
Right. And well, can I point out like that when that poem is not just abstract, he actually supported Hitler before he realized his mistake.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And that's what these people are doing right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's infuriating.
Yeah. Well, I think I hear what you're saying. And you, yeah, absolutely. The part of this is the heritage of white supremacy that comes back and bites people, and then they're not even aware that, oh, it was my white supremacy that did this, or it was how I bought into this.
I quoted you on a response. I quoted you, and you probably got a quote for something like this, but I quoted you on a response on somebody's Facebook page the other day, and they were talking about all these things and how they're hurting them. I said the thing that white people forget is racism hurts black people, but it hurts white people too.
Oh gosh,
yeah.
Most
Same
of the
as
people,
misogyny.
Yeah. So it's like if you look at the prison system, you have disproportionate numbers of black people, but 60% of them are white folks. And it's the same. It's
social programs. They love cutting social programs because they date all the people on social programs are black people. Right. When I tell them 2 people in West Virginia are going to suffer because of this.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Couple of comments in the chat.
Yeah, let's hit the chat a little bit.
From Teresa, this is going back a bit, but it's not just these 2 men. They are nothing without the network propping them up, including some people equally wicked, but also some that are not. Some people who are too scared to resist or unaware of how they are contributing to the problem, which works with the whole analogy of monoculture. The plants in a monoculture aren't bad themselves, but without diversity, they may become sick and weak and unable to function without the curated environment they are grown in. If they were grown in a better environment, they would have more pest and disease resistance and be healthier. But they are just growing where they are planted. Luckily, we have more mobility and options than plants. Emil said,
I'm going to pause. I'm going to pause real quick. I want to pause real quick because Teresa, I think that's a beautiful analogy. And it kind of points to, I think, some of Tony's frustration. Like, I mean, because yeah, I mean, people, they go where they're planted, and then they don't necessarily have a lot of. I mean, there's a lot that they may not have control over. They're not aware of, but there's still a level of control. You're a person. You can move, right? You can change your mind. You can educate yourself. But no, I think that's a beautiful analogy because we're dealing with ecosystems here as well. Yeah.
I want to say this, and I love Teresa's commentary, and she is always on point. I have one bit of exception with that one, and that's the fact that at this point, I'm not giving anybody credit for not knowing. You saw what he did those 4 years that he was here for 2016. Unless you're 3 years old, I'm not giving you a pass. You knew exactly what he was going to do. He told you what he was going to do. Yeah. You've seen what he can do, and y'all still voted for him.
Let me tag on to what you're saying. So from comment from YouTube, Jennifer says, Project 2025 wasn't real, but it sure seems to be the playbook. Yeah, yes. There was plenty of advance warning, right?
Jennifer, where have you been, sis?
Yeah.
It was real from the beginning.
No, that's what she's saying. I mean, it's sarcastic.
She's being sarcastic. Real. Okay.
She's being sarcastic.
Okay.
But yeah, you're right. It was broadcast. But I want to pause because I do like I know the bad guys are really frustrating. I do want to get back to talking about the trees planted by the water and the importance of the diversity. Like, they can do whatever the hell they're going to do what they do. We got to do something different, right? But no, I appreciate. I'm not to cut you off. I appreciate because I'm also enraged
Okay,
Um,
I agree, Tony, that the water is polluted. But a few years back, when we had a really bad drought, I found out it's better to water with water that's polluted a little bit than not
With no
water at
water at
all.
all.
Joe actually hooked up a hose to the drain on our bathtub on the second level, so, which is a big bathtub, which when you emptied it, it drained out down the hose and into the garden in the backyard, and it had soap in it, but it still kept the plants alive.
yeah, yeah,
Camille
yeah,
said the psalmist and ancient writers seem to understand that people are given to human nature that is predictable and cyclical. I always have to remember that Christ, as giving and healing as he was still crucified, and that
yeah,
the people preferred to release a felon.
yeah. So let's
Chris
pause,
said,
before we run to Chris's comment. I think thank you, Camille, because that's exactly. I mean, I think you nailed it. It's like the guy that you're following got crucified. So what
It is not the
I'm telling
first
you,
time
like,
that this has happened.
yeah, what do you expect? Yeah, I mean, right there in Luke it says they persecuted the prophets. What do you expect? Yeah. Yes, thank you for that.
well, you know, Christians in the United States are constantly persecuted.
Oh, I know, right. Totally. That's why we need to look at all this anti-Christian bias in the United States. Sarcasm.
Okay,
Sarcasm.
Camille said Elon has erased the race line and replaced it with a line of the have and have nots
Mhm.
and has grouped us all into a parasite class. Yes.
Mhm. Yeah.
And Teresa says, Tony, I mean more than just his supporters, I promise. I mean, we all have ways we don't realize we're helping prop them up. I mean, I swear I'm going through my retirement accounts to see where I'm accidentally lining those redacted for church people's pockets.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. Yeah, I
Oh
think
yeah,
that's
and I get it, Teresa. I mean, I get what you're saying. I'm just angry right now.
yeah, absolutely. Well, I appreciate that, Teresa, too, because as you said, like we're born into the system and like figuring out how to extract ourselves from it is such a labor. And even when you like you think you're free of it, I mean, it's hard. I mean, I realize, I mean, we're broadcasting on Facebook right now. I hate Facebook. No, those of you on Facebook, thanks for joining us. I really hate Facebook. I hate Mark Zuckerberg. I hate meaning I'm sure God loves his soul. I really feel like these people, as who was it Camille said earlier, they've reversed it. The rich people are the parasites. We're the ones providing value. They're the ones ripping it off with AI and selling it back to us and exploiting our labor. So I just feel like, yeah,
Dave,
Zuckerberg,
but that's
all those
also
billionaires are parasites. Go ahead.
that you're right, because that's also my take on social programs. Like I hate hearing rich people talk about we got all these entitlement programs. The entitlement program is the fact that you have a business where you don't pay people a livable wage. Because these social programs actually help you more than they help the people that they're supposedly helping. Because one,
Right.
it's not enough money for them to even come up on or even survive on. That's
Yeah.
the first thing. But literally, they sit around here and line their pockets with bill. I'm still trying to figure out what the hell are you going to do with $1 billion in a lifetime.
Yeah. Right. Absolutely.
You don't even
Well,
have that many days to live.
and I think one of the big saying, Tony, that things like Head Start, or we invest in literacy programs, or we invest in drug rehab programs. We're investing in human beings that then can turn around, and I hate using this capital language. They can then be productive people, right? But every dollar given to these social programs reaps tons and tons of returns, oftentimes that we can't even estimate. And the
But they
state and the
only
stuff,
exist because these rich people don't pay people what they should be making.
exactly, right. Right. So I think that's a big like helping. One of the things I think in terms of shifting our language around this is really trying to help people who are so-called fiscally conservative, help them understand. I mean, a lot of people would agree with the idea that people are our greatest resource. Like if you say that, you use that phrase, a lot of people will nod. Oh yeah, sure, sure. But then thinking about these social programs as investments in people instead of, these people are leeches, which is not true. It's just
Couple of
anyway,
comments.
yeah, go ahead.
Oh, Well, they're still coming in.
Hmm.
Miriam said, seems like it's those who are living alternatively who are most likely to make it through this money grabbing time. Barter, grow food in your yard, and if you're lucky, have a safe source of water. In our souls, we need a church at least once a week. Camille
Thank you, Miriam, for the plug.
Camille said,
No.
even as much as God has destroyed humans, he has never removed our freedom of choice. We
Mm,
have the right to see and hear what we want to guide us. An ethical compass is more than believing in Jesus, it means living like Jesus.
Absolutely.
Even if we were
Absolutely.
spending into a deficit, isn't that what we're supposed to do? Like the widow giving her last two coins to give out of your need to be favorable in
Yeah.
God's eyes?
great point.
Yeah.
Great point.
And to be, yeah, yeah, I'm not sure your last words came through, but to give out of your need to be favorable in God's eyes. Absolutely. That you're not giving out of an excess, right? You're giving because that's what we do. Like this is one reason I really like I Robin Wall Kimmerer's book Braiding Sweetgrass, where she's really looking from a native perspective on Western culture. And she talks about, again, this kind of gets back to permaculture, this idea of reciprocity, the idea that we really live in a system of giving. Like if we're rational about it, we don't earn the things that we get. Like if you plant something, this is one of the reasons I love the agriculture metaphor so much. If you plant something, you don't know if it's going to turn out good or bad. It really depends upon the ecosystem and a lot of things that are beyond your control. And when you get a harvest, it's all a gift. Like all of it is a gift. And to shift our thinking from, oh, I made this, to this is a gift. Like I put work in, but it's reciprocal. And then I give back. The whole idea is that I'm giving back to the land. I'm giving back to the source of the universe from which I get everything. When I give to someone who's needy, they're not a leech. I'm giving back to the universe that's already given so much to me. Anyway, go ahead, Tony.
It's like someone said before, though, like, let's reverse it. Who are the real leeches, though?
Yes,
Like,
right.
leeches exist, it's just not the people that we've been told that they're leeches. And then, the other thing that I get, and I hate calling people stupid, but people are stupid. There was a guy made a comment about, you wouldn't run your household in a deficit. Most people run their households in a deficit, first of all. Second of all, the way that the American government works is not the same way your household works. Like
Right.
these are two totally different things. And people trying to compare apples to oranges always infuriates me. Like
Yeah.
you cannot make the analogy that the house should not run the gov in a deficit, so the government should not run a deficit. These are two totally different things. Two totally different
Mhm.
things. But it's the short-sighted people who just get me because there's so many things that they don't understand. And I feel like I feel like we've let the people who like didn't pass third grade decide to be the teachers.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Like they're the ones who we are actually following and looking to now.
Hmm.
And it makes no sense to me. And not saying that everybody's opinions and voices are not important, is they are. But you also got to know where to take them. And
Yeah.
like I wouldn't want someone who went to like dental school to be my podiatrist. Like to have you got this part done, the other part you don't get. But right now we're in this point where the most unqualified people in the world are doing some of the most important jobs that affect the lives of all of us. And the,
Yeah.
the, the thing that gets me, then they have to say, well, it's because we let these minorities in who, because of DEI, who are screwing everything up.
Right.
If Black people have, even with DEI, Black people in particular, because I'm Black and I can talk about this, have the hardest time just getting it to where, I'm going to say this, extraordinary Black people have the hardest time getting to where mediocre people, white people thrive.
Oh yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So you're gonna get rid of DEI, but yet you're gonna put someone who has no idea how to run a $1 billion department, like the Department of Defense.
Yeah. Can I pause you? Can I pause you real quick to
I'm
give you an
done.
example? I would just like, well, just like watching the Secretary of Defense 2 seconds into a briefing pick up a whiskey and drink it on stage. I'm thinking only a white guy could do that.
Who has a drinking problem?
Right.
Who
Who's sat
promised he would
and
stop?
right. But to your point, can you imagine a woman doing that or a black person doing that? I mean, again, it's just like shrug. Oh, so I do again. I don't. It's easy for us to get on the rant wagon. I'm gonna get back to the comments.
Please,
And
because
Okay,
I'm on the rant
comments.
wagon. I'm on
that's
the rant
okay. It's
wagon.
all right.
Uh, Going back to the comments, Miriam said sarcastically, but who would give up their last Bitcoin?
Right.
Chris
Hey, if you
said,
put 2 Bitcoins in, that would like be someone's entire salary. That would be
For a couple of
Chris
years.
said, Chris said it's not the responsibility of the wealthy to support communities, not because they shouldn't care about others, but because wealthy people shouldn't exist.
That
We
right there.
thank you.
cannot depend on them for anything.
That right
Yeah,
there, right
billionaires
there.
should not exist.
Camille said
Absolutely.
our government has been like George Bailey's building and loan in It's a Wonderful Life. Your money is in everyone else's well-being.
Yeah.
And Teresa says, yes, Miriam, it's so hard. They have taken some amazing technology that could save us all, and we could all live in a freaking paradise without hunger or pollution, the Star Trek future, and they have used it instead to break down society and
Yeah.
increase suffering and death and pain.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Teresa. I think one of the things, and I would say one of the things in terms of nourishing the roots here, um, Gene Roddenberry nourished the roots. Like the part of the prophetic imagination is imagining what it could be like otherwise. Like to have this, like we could be net zero tomorrow, basically. We've seen without a lot of government help that solar and wind power has just taken off like crazy. In fact, it takes government subsidies to keep us tethered to fossil fuels. And I kind of like you're saying, I mean, I think about what could be different. Or if we did, I mean, we could have universal health care tomorrow, and it would be amazing. Um, but we would have to sacrifice billionaires to do it. And I think that's the real thing that we need to like in terms of both our own understanding and sharing that with other people. We could be living in Gene Roddenberry's future, but it can't be Elon Musk's future, right? That's really got to be. And the more people watch Star Trek than know anything about Elon Musk, so I feel like we got a good edge.
Well, Dave, the other thing about that is like, Gene Roddenberry's vision for the future included everybody.
Yes,
Elon Musk's vision for the future includes white men. Like
exactly.
that's none of that, and people.
That's a good essay right there. I mean, or good. I like you got Gene Roddenberry here or Elon Musk vision, and like,
and the sad part about it, I do wish more people watch Star Trek. I would really wish more people would watch Star Trek and look at the social context of it. For them to have Lieutenant Uhura on the original show back in the late 60s in
yes,
a non-subservient role,
mm-hmm.
like as part of the managing crew of that spaceship in the future. I mean, that was groundbreaking thinking at that point. And
Mm-hmm.
the problem that I have is we don't learn from our past.
Mm-hmm. Right, absolutely.
It's like we just refuse to learn. And I just don't understand. Again, let's go back to the tree thing because I don't want to rant again. But like, I know we have to stand strong. I know we have to nourish our roots, but it's just exhausting.
It is.
It's just exhausting.
It is.
We should not be living like this right now.
Yeah.
It's lost on so many people that the richest man in the world is telling poor people what they can't have. And by what I mean poor people, I literally mean everybody else except for the 1%.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I absolutely. I want to go back to what you were just saying about, I mean, Lieutenant Uhura. Again, when you go back and you watch the old Star Trek, I believe I saw this online. But I had, I didn't know when I was watching this as a kid. There's one scene where she comes and sits and at the con to control the ship, and Sulu, who's George Takei's character, who now is, outspoken gay rights activist, he turns and he looks at her and he gives her this smile, and it's just this one little brief scene, but what that meant in context, so let's hand the control of the ship to a black woman.
And it's
Like,
not just the black woman.
uh-huh.
I grew up shortly after World War II when every Asian was an enemy.
Exactly.
So
And then,
George
right.
Takei himself was important, and then Chekhov was Russian.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, it was just a whole
Yeah.
conglomerate of diversity.
Yeah. Yeah. Diverse, like, again, and that's the thing that they want to attack, in part, I think, is because of that vision. I mean, it's because of the, and so I think, doubling down on the vision of the prophetic imagination of what our world could be like if we didn't have to suffer the, whims of billionaires. But let's hit Camille's comments real quick, and we're gonna need to wrap it up here in a minute. So
Let's see. Camille said, could it be that imagination has been driven out of the minds of many? Yes, with book bans and divesting education. It makes it easier to manipulate and trap the mind into a hardcore religious ideology that says the only way to gain God's grace is to send in money to support your pastor. And
yeah.
then, even though he has a mega mansion and an airplane, I did not realize you had an airplane, Dave.
And a Mega Mansion too.
Mega Mansion. Well, so yeah, I mean, I think I would, I mean, I definitely share the irritation at conservative churches that are conservative mega churches that really push an individualistic gospel and or prosperity gospel. Um, but I don't actually think. I mean, what we've seen sociologically is that although there's a lot of people who are buying into white Christian nationalism, they're not very Christian. I mean, like, they don't go to church. Actually, the sociological analysis is that you got a lot of people who say they are now evangelical because evangelical is a political identity, not a religious one. And I mean, again, and I have to parse this really carefully because 81% of white evangelicals continue to support Donald Trump, but 60% of mainline Protestants do, like, not prosperity gospel megachurch, and that's just white supremacy. I mean,
Yes.
that's just plain white supremacy. And I think, but you have only 17-20% of the population goes to church. So I don't think, I mean, I think the theology is toxic. I think the fact that our politicians are now our priests, basically. But anyway, I won't get into, I could get into a whole academic discussion. I won't do that right now.
I think Camille hit on something when she said that the imagination has been driven out of
Yeah.
the minds of many. And that's not church. That's
Yeah.
So many schools teach black and white answers to everything and don't put up with gray areas. And I think that's one reason places like Alabama School of Fine Arts has just succeeded in so many areas past other schools in Alabama is because it encourages imagination. It encourages
Yeah.
self-expression. Teresa said, small sacrifice really just got to convince a lot of people that billionaires aren't their friends, and I do not know how to do that. They literally deny what they see with their eyes. I tried with my mom last week, and she was all, he didn't realize that was a Nazi salute. He's just awkward. Oh my God, is he super genius or is he not? she will say, but Obama, even if he took her last meal from her hands herself, what is this sickness?
Yeah, yeah.
Racism.
Well, and the tough thing is, and this is what I talk to a lot about, both with parents talking to kids and spouses talking to each other, is reactance. Like when you address it directly, you get mule, you get digging in, and people double down on their ignorance and on their wrong answers because they don't want to be wrong. And so it's a real challenge, I think. This is one reason I do want to come back. I mean, I do think imagination is so important. Like, I really want to paint a picture for you of what this could be like. And I think part of it is not tiring of just keep putting out the alternative future. But
And Camille responded back to Risa, I think it's because everyone wants to be wealthy, and somehow they think it'll trickle down if they just support the billionaire class.
only what trickles down isn't wealth, is it?
Hadn't worked in 40 years.
Yeah. It's trickling is there's something else trickling down, and it ain't wealth. So
Right.
well, I appreciate your discussion today. Again, I know this is a tough topic, but I do want to come back to the idea that we are trees. I mean, these bad guys seem so overwhelming, and part of what the scriptures tell us is size and influence and power are not what we think it is. That we would be trees planted by water, and they're going to be like chaff, dust. So I appreciate you being with us today. Let's go ahead and pull the liturgy back on.
Oh, Miriam said even trees grow near Chernobyl.
Yeah,
I like that.
that's right. That's right. Okay, let me scroll down here. Where are we?
Our closing prayer is from John Cobb. Most gracious God, you love all the world and every creature individually. We thank you that you love us, not depending on what we do or think. Help us love one another, including those who we think of as our enemies. Bless us in every new adventure. Help us to be open to divine guidance. Amen.
God is love. Nothing is wasted. All things shall be well. Go in peace.
So thank you all for tuning in today. Especially thanks if you've been tuning in on YouTube or Facebook. Again, if you just click like or comment with where you're watching from, that gives us a way to count you. I'm going to go ahead and stop the live stream. If you're